behavioral neuroscientist, researcher, and academic with extensive experience in cognition, neurobiology, and translational brain research. She's a professor of behavioral neuroanatomy in the Department of Anatomy, Laboratory, University of Technology, Ogbomoso. Please, when I mention Latte, give a big hand. I pride in my institution. This is a big guy again. It is always Latte and others. Really, that's why you're here. She's the principal investigator of the Behavioral Neuroscience Research Group, where I work focusing on neurobiological basis of behavior, cognition, neurodevelopment, stress-related disorders, metabolic dysfunction, and brain-behavior interactions. Our research integrates experimental neuroscience with translational and behavioral approaches aimed at improving the understanding of neurological and psychiatric conditions. Professor Onaolapo has contributed significantly to neuroscience education, mentorship, and scientific capacity through teaching, research supervision, interdisciplinary collaboration, and academic leadership. He is also actively involved in promoting experimental neuroscience education and innovative learning approaches for young scientists. I think I should also add that she is one of the co-founders of our renowned journal in Lautech and one of the conveners of this program. She's happily married to Professor O.G. Onaolapo, who has contributed significantly to the collaboration. Exactly, you find two collaborators having more than 100 papers together, but with these couples, they have more than 100 papers together. Please join me welcome with a big Professor Onaolapo.
How many of us know that there is I'm not too quite two cases about that. After the analog, there's what we call digital computing. If you somebody learns that signals continue to hit the neuron and until it gets to an electrical threshold and that actual potential is not generated. How many of us remember that? So that digital computing occurs when the soma reaches a strict bioelectrical threshold that triggers an all-or-none actual potential. This instantly converts high-dimensional analog input into standard binary outputs. Yesterday we also talked about neural communications. That neural communications are strictly dependent on electrical signaling process actual potential or chemical signaling through what? Neurotransmitters. But then when we move from neural signals to where we are very on today. And how does it do that? Neural activity, like I said, the electrical and chemical signaling between neurons. Neurons which are small groups of interconnected neurons processing specific information. Memory, interconnected neurons processing memory. Interconnected neurons processing what? Perception. Interconnected neurons processing logic. When these brain networks come together, they become brain networks, which are large-scale systems such as the executive control network and the default mode network. When this happens, we cannot have cognition. Mental processes that include attention, memory, perception. When you say somebody has cognitive deficit, they're not only saying that I don't remember what I told you yesterday. It means that I have deficit in attention span. It means that I have deficit in your perception. It means that I have deficit in learning. And there are models to learn. To make these different memory processes or these different cognitive processes. Then we have reasoning. Reasoning that is compare evidence, make inferences, and solve problems. You are not a good researcher if your reasoning is not proper. If you cannot compare evidence, you cannot make inferences, and you cannot solve problems. If we now get to the highest level, which is logic, and what is logic? It's the highest level of structured reasoning, where conclusions follow systematically from available evidence. After we are able to sit here today, because we have an optimal balance. We are able to sit here and listen to the last 2 days because we have an optimal balance. It was mentioned yesterday, executive neurotransmitters and we have what? Inhibiting neurotransmitters. So, glutamic is the prototype exciting neurotransmitter. Such that if you have an excess of glutamic in your system, you are what? You have high excess excitation. You just can't fix it, you just want to keep doing something. It can be good, and most times it's too much very, very, very bad. Then you also have an excess inhibitory response or inhibitory neurotransmitter in your system where your gamma is very high and you have reduced signal transmission. You just feel like sleeping. Your difference is more often than not. So the ability of the body and the brain to maintain a critical balance, optimal balance between the activities of excitatory neurotransmitters, as an example, and inhibitory neurotransmitters, gamma as an example, is why we are able to do what? Sit here today. But then, a couple of philosophical observations, which is not verified, says all geniuses are bad, but not all bad men are geniuses. I applaud this binary is not used as in science and other, but we are not restricted here. So all geniuses are considered mad, and but not all bad men are geniuses. However, a scientifically defensible fact is that some forms of exceptional creativity and intellectual achievement may be associated with an increased prevalence of certain psychiatric traits. But genius and mental illness are neither synonymous nor mutually dependent, which means that physiological thinking. Our research, the greatness of our research depends on how we are able to think logically. How am I able to do an experiment and not the experiment reading me and not reading the experiment? You know when you read the experiment, you say you want to check for science. You take a group of rats and you know that you give them aluminum chloride. Research has said you develop what? Alzheimer's. And you don't see the Alzheimer's. You don't see all the science. But because research has said that, you create when you are doing the different medicines, you create the results so you are reading the science, not the science reading. So for you to be a good researcher, you must learn to take what you feel, move it away, and follow scientific principles, and you do that constantly, you soon realize that the sky can't see the issue. So what is logical thinking? It's the ability to analyze information, identify patterns, evaluate evidence, and reach rational conclusions. Tell me a scientist. Forget the neuroscience. Tell me a scientist who doesn't have to obey all these rules to become a scientist. And I saw sand. I said, this sand you can use to make cement. You can just buy cement and make cement. On this sand we can get their trees that are planted. We get trees. We cut the trees on our land for timber. I built like 2 or 3 houses by doing that. But it was because I was asking myself, how do people see sand and solve and see a problem that they need to solve? But it's not something that happens in one day. Something that does what? It's gradual. It's gradual. If you want to start to look like that, it's not, you don't need to get to America to become logical. Most times our people become dull when they get abroad. So all these things you can, logical thinking transforms information into understanding, understanding into decisions, and decisions into impact. For you to be impactful neuroscientists, you must learn logical thinking. I'm going to go here. What's the roadmap to logical thinking? You must observe, ask questions, analyze them. And quickly give us a practical roadmap. Step 1, observe. Your research focus emerges. While reviewing literature, you notice that elderly individuals with Alzheimer's disease often show sleep disturbances before memory impairment becomes obvious. What's the observation? There seems to be a relationship between sleep disruption and what? Cognitive decline. That is where your science begins. Step 2, you ask questions. That helps you to define the problem. What are examples of questions? Does poor sleep accelerate cognitive decline? Is relationship causal or merely associative? What does it mean to be causal? Is it the poor sleep that is causing memory decline, or there's a background brain neurodegeneration that is presenting as both sleep decline and cognitive decline? What is now able to make research questions? Can sleep disruption predict the onset of Alzheimer's? That's a research question. You see how easy it is to form research questions? Step 3, you analyze the patterns. You examine existing data sets. What studies have people done? And what conclusions can we reach from their studies? Like for example, sleep quality, memory score. If sleep quality is high and memory score is high. In some people you receive moderate sleep quality, moderate memory score. In some people you receive poor sleep quality, low memory score. You identify what? The pattern. Reduced sleep quality appears associated with poorer memory performance. This transforms observation into what? A hypothesis. So you can draw your non-hypothesis from that. Step 4, you consider options. What alternative explanations for what you observe? Could memory decline be due to age? Could it be due to depression? Could it be because this person is using medication? Could it be due to physical inactivity? Logical thinkers avoid the first explanation that appears plausible. 5, you evaluate the evidence. Because another one conduct studies. What we testing neuroimaging. Professor Onaolapo talked a lot about, mentioned about neuroimaging yesterday. And results may show that there is a significant correlation between sleep disruption and hippocampal atrophy. Now, evidence supports one explanation more strongly than alternative. So you are able to draw conclusions from that. You decide not to exist or you decide and act. What are the conclusions you can draw? Cognitive disruption may contribute to neurodegenerative processes that are associated with cognitive decline. And what are your actions? You publish your findings. You recommend sleep interventions. You design post-studies. For a number of us here, we aim to what? Publish our findings. You know why? The translational impact of your study was not part of what you were thinking before you started the study. You are just interested in working on rats. Yes. Drosophila is a new thing. Yes. Therapeutic elegance is a new thing. Yes. But the goal is what? Translational neuroscience, translational medicine. And then the third part is to design follow-up studies. Don't stop with one study. Keep searching, even on that one line. mathematics, or grammar. Start with the basics. What are those basics? You must learn how to make deductive reasoning. Draw conclusions from general cases. If all humans are mortal, Socrates is human, then Socrates is what? Mortal. Do you get? General principles. You must follow general principles. That's deductive reasoning. If all Nigerians are black, that means Professor Mrs. Onaolapo must be black. But all Nigerians are black? Yes. I did not say complexion. They are black Africans. Because they are white Africans now. South Africans. Inductive reasoning, generalization from specific observation. If every time you see a dog, it is black, you can infer that all dogs are black until otherwise proven, right? And what are fallacies? They are common reasoning errors. Examples are ad hominem, false cause, those things that erode as in their lives completely and totally. Knowing them help us to spot weak arguments quickly. Of importance, train your mind with small, structured problems. I asked how many of us have read what is that? What killed Rising? Beautiful Mind. How many of us watch Vogue from growing up? How many of us watch science fiction? You want to say neuroscience, I don't watch science fiction. Right? All this AI thing that you just 10 years ago, we were watching as science fiction. Clarify the problem, what's being asked. When faced with a complex issue, what do? You clarify the problem, what's being asked. List the fact, what is true without assumption. Identify the assumptions. What are you taking for granted? What step by step, follow the steps that are given. Not skipping ahead. Check for consistency. Does your conclusion contradict your earlier facts? Practice slowly and fast because there are many things to do today. Practice argument analysis. There are people that can argue for Africa. It's a good skill. If you are doing it because you are using it to practice, there was a time in my life I can argue the sun is black. Just get the person right up and see how long it takes the person to convince me. I used to do that for fun. I used to do so many argumentative things. I can talk with somebody from morning to night. Thank God for those things. Do those things now. When you cross certain ladders, you can only talk to your husband or to your wife. So do all the talking. I'm not saying it's not interesting, but see the world. Do all arguments that because now if you're married and you're arguing, they say you're fighting. Nobody knows that it's just that we just feel like arguing for no just. So you identify the premise, identify the conclusion, what are they trying to prove, test. Does the conclusion follow logical, list of the premise, spot logical fallacy. Write out your reasoning. A number of us don't, the thought comes to don't write it down. You just say, I will remember. No, write it down. Because if you write it down, you start to, you have done another phase of logic. You become the problem you need to solve. You need to use flow charts or argument maps. Write your reasoning in steps, numbering each point. Practice making your argument as short and clear as possible without losing accuracy. You know that you are arguing and then where do you start from? You don't know where the argument started from. Don't be on that line. That's not logic. That's waste of time. Build patience and reflection. Logical thinking isn't fast thinking. Eventually it becomes fast thinking. When you're starting, it's not fast thinking. It's careful thinking. When you feel rushed, pause and ask. What do I know for sure? What's just an assumption? If I take this assumption, does the conclusion still hold? Learn from fields that require logic. Don't just say, I am an anatomist, I'm a pharmacologist, I'm a scientist, and don't explore other fields, mathematics, philosophy, computer programming, science. This helps to build the ability to think logically. Without logical thinking, observations remain facts. data remains numbers, experiments remain activities. With logical thinking, observation becomes what? Hypothesis. Data becomes evidence, evidence becomes knowledge, knowledge becomes discovery. My prayer is that there's somebody here who will win a Nobel Prize because they choose today to start to think logically. Final take-home statement. Every neuroscience breakthrough, from the discovery of neurons to modern brain-computer interfaces, began with a scientist who observed carefully, questioned deeply, reasoned logically, and followed the evidence wherever it led. Who am I in the neuroscience community? I'm a neuroscientist, a researcher, educator and mentor, a collaborator, and advocate.